Make a stand in the place where you live, now place where think about direction, wonder why you haven't now. Stand in the place where you were, now place where think about the Constitution and the Second Amendment. This video was sent to me by Lloyd from Penny News. Subscribe to Penny News. Lloyd, we still have to do the interview. I know, bro. I know. I'm getting hit at every angle from every position. Yeah, hashtag no homo. I'm going to let this video play out without me talking because I could not say anything better than this guy has said or states or the way he gives it to his politicians. This is exactly the mentality of an American. This is a true American right here. You're going to hear it. You're going to watch it.
Good evening, representatives, and thank you again for your time today. Good morning, right? The United States of America, above all else, is a constitutional republic. Yes, we have a democracy in which we get to vote for our elected officials, but our elected officials, you, above all else, are limited in your power and in the legislation that you pass by the Constitution of the United States, a document on which you raised your right hand to God and swore an oath to, a document whose premise is regularly under attack. Unfortunately, it's being attacked by the very people who are sworn to abide by it, our government. And it's our own faults that the Constitution is under duress. We, the American people, who are supposed to have control of our government, have been asleep at the wheel and all too trusting, while you, our legislators, senators, representatives, and politicians of all parties and backgrounds have run amok, unabashedly using your power and influence to limit the freedoms and liberties of the individual. Americans love to proclaim that we are a free people, yet have lost sight of what it means to be free, and in saying so are lying to ourselves. Yes, we are fortunate enough to have freedoms that others in the world do not, but we are no longer free as our founders had intended us to be. Yet those very founders had foreseen how even in America, a runaway government could become problematic, and they added a constitution to an amendment to the Constitution, a fail-safe, so to speak, that would protect us against the rampant abuse of power by our government, an inalienable constitutional right to keep and bear arms. The founders saw this as so important and necessary, it was the Second Amendment to our Constitution, directly following the right to free speech, which I'm fortunate enough to benefit from here today. The founders of this great land knew, having just won a war for their freedom against an unjust power, that given enough time, all governments have a propensity to become too powerful, and as a direct result, the freedom of its constituents falters. This was their reasoning behind their inclusion of the right to keep and bear arms within the Constitution. They even went so far as to include, even though it's already implied, the phrase, "shall not be infringed." This does not mean that you, regardless of how many people call on you to do so, can limit the type or capacity of the firearms that we, as free Americans, can own. Don't forget that at the time of this country's founding, Americans had access legally to the same type of weaponry that the military had. And that was the point. It was for our protection against the state. That's how we can keep them in check. I think if we look at the tremendous amount of overreach practiced today by the United States government, it's pretty apparent why those at the very top want to take away this means of protection that our forefathers entrusted to us. They realize that we Americans who hold our liberties dear are fed up. We are tired of being overregulated. We're tired of being taxed until we're near penniless. We're tired of our money going to a Federal Reserve to pay an unsustainable debt that we have to international banksters who couldn't care less about America. We're tired of having to ask for government's permission and licensure to do things that are within our God-given rights as free people to do. We're tired of seeing state-run programs being ran inefficiently, ineffectively, and wastefully. We're tired of news outlets, Hollywood, social media, and the education system being used as propaganda to indoctrinate the populace and advance the state's agenda. We're tired of being lied to. We're tired of going to war under false pretenses. To summarize, we're tired of our uncontrollable government. While we feel our voices have fallen on deaf ears to our politicians, make no mistake that amongst the citizenry, there is a quiet storm brewing. We are approaching a tipping point, and you'd be remiss to think that those at the top of the power structure aren't shaken by this. It doesn't take much critical thought to surmise why they're trying so hard to pass legislation against privately owned munitions. And to those who support this legislation, it's my understanding that you believe by being here, you're advocating against violence. On the contrary, you are advocating for violence. If the state decides to make 10-round magazines and assault weapons, which, by the way, is an incredibly vague, ambiguous term that I don't think anybody could really define, if you decide to make them illegal, are you advocating that the state use violence or threats of violence to disarm innocent Americans? Because it certainly sounds like it. You can't sincerely believe that we're just going to forfeit our right to self-defense, knowing the purpose of this right and understanding the unlawfulness of civil asset forfeiture, notwithstanding the money people have spent on their guns. What happens when we defy these laws? Are you advocating that men with guns come to take away our guns? Because it sure sounds like it. Also, it needs to be said that I'm sure some of those on the other side have used the words Trump and Hitler in the same sentence, yet advocate that the state, with someone who they refer to as a fascist dictator at the forefront, be the only entity allowed to have guns. You see where I'm going with this? These people are hypocrites, and they should think for themselves instead of thinking what they're told to think. And before you quip that I'm here on behalf of the NRA or that I have some sort of ulterior motive, I am not, and I do not. I am not an NRA.
Oh, no. Oh, what did I do? I bent over to grab the tennis racket so I can kill another bumblebee, and that happened.
Good evening, representatives, and thank you again for defense, knowing the purpose of this. I've used the words Trump and Hitler in the same sentence, yet advocate that the state, with someone who they refer to as a fascist dictator at the forefront, be the only entity allowed to have guns. You see where I'm going with this? These people are hypocrites, and they should think for themselves instead of thinking what they're told to think. And before you quip that I'm here on behalf of the NRA or that I have some sort of ulterior motive, I am not, and I do not. I am not an NRA member. In fact, I believe that the NRA is far too willing to compromise on some gun laws, as they know they will take on more donors and make more money whenever there is conflict. So the more they compromise, the more gun laws get introduced and the more money they make. So no, before anybody says so, I'm not NRA, and I'm also not what you might call a gun nut. I own but a pistol for personal protection and a rifle which I've literally just acquired as a direct result of this law being written. I'm not a sportsman and I'm not a collector. I'm just someone with an understanding of history who by virtue does not trust his government. And I know what some of you may be thinking, that I'm some sort of extremist. My delivery is very abrasive. Some of you aren't thinking at all because you tuned me out at the start once you heard my position, and that's fine. If these generalizations apply to you, I ask you to please familiarize yourself with the history of America and the Constitution as it was written. Ladies and gentlemen, America was conceived out of defiance, and we not only have a constitutional right as free Americans, but also an inalienable right as human beings to defy any and all laws that are unjust. Lest we not forget that a mere 3% of colonists sparked the American Revolution. There are millions of libertarians paying attention to what is being discussed today. Representatives, it is a sure bet that if the government you represent continues on this path of tyranny, we will not comply. I ask you to please remember the basis on which this country came to be before you decide to pass any more overreaching legislation, especially in regards to firearms. For those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. Thank you very much. Good evening, representatives, and thank you.
Good job, dude, whoever you are. You did a great job. I couldn't have said it better myself. The term assault rifle, anyone that uses the term assault rifle as if it has a definitive definition is an imbecile or a con man, because assault rifle, I mean, if you want to be technical, that would be a military grade M16 with a select fire switch on the side where you can pick semi-auto, 3-round burst, or full automatic. That's not an AR-15, okay? Assault rifles, technically, the ones that are full auto, were banned pretty much in 1986. You need like special permission, and you have to create like an imaginary entity to own one or something of that nature, to have control over one, and blah 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 blah. So they make the definition of assault rifle and use that term constantly in order to muddy the waters, because it's an erroneous term. So people who use that as if it's some type of factual term are either imbeciles, con men, or both. So I'll say that about guns. What else? I don't know what else. That's why I have to pause the video and blur it out right away, because I can't remember after the video. Anyway, dude, you did a great job. And Lloyd from Penny News, subscribe to Penny News. Thank you so much for sending me this. I appreciate it. We got to do our interview, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm going to say. You know, we're going to do it eventually. Don't go dying on me or anything. Ha, ha, ha. I'll probably die before you. That's a bad joke. Don't joke about death. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Peace, tranquility, Second Amendment, Bill of Rights, no victim, no crime. Etsy.com, John's Coin Rings, no spaces. Thanks for watching. Love you. Bye.